Gonna do some explosive movements today. Probably some squats, probably some bench, maybe some jumps. But yeah, I just gotta get the body moving and warmed up first. I like to mainly get warmed up through the upper body. Just seems to be easier. Our Canadian buddy, Dave Man Caveman, said he's got a heat dish in his garage gym, and it brings the temperature of the room up to 0 degrees. Crazy. Always liked working out like this. First of all, chest and back always feels good. Got the kind of opposing muscle groups. Save some time. You just bounce from one to the other with less rest interval. You know, normal rest interval between sets might be 2-3 minutes. When you're doing this way, just do about a minute back and forth. I try not to really rush into them because the goal isn't like just to not have any rest, but it doesn't matter if you're fatigued to do a press when you just did a pull. Some research actually says that the opposing muscle group will fire stronger and harder when the opposite muscle group was worked previously. Pretty cool to see Sam Sulek compete. I think he got kind of unfairly criticized by some people. People said he looked like shit and stuff like that. I think that's pretty drastic. It's his first bodybuilding show. I thought he looked amazing. I think he's doing the Arnold, which is right around the corner here. And there's a lot of pressure on that guy, you know. But the fact that he stepped up and actually competed, I think is awesome. There's like kind of no reason for him to, right? Why do a lot of people compete in powerlifting, bodybuilding? I think a lot of it's to get recognition. You can't have more recognition than he's got, so he doesn't necessarily have to step on stage. So I thought that was cool. And I think it's a good lesson to people that, you know, stepping on the stage is different than practicing in the gym and training in the gym. They're very different. That's why a lot of people aren't brave enough to get on the stage or to step on the platform in powerlifting, because their, you know, 365 bench that they hit with their ass coming off the bench makes them feel good, and still a great lift. It doesn't mean that it's not a lift, right? It doesn't mean no lift. It just means that it's a gym lift. There's a big difference between that. And then also, you know, going to the gym and wearing straps and doing a 600-pound deadlift or something like that. You're not going to be able to do that in a powerlifting meet where there's people judging you very strictly and you can't wear straps, you know. And then bodybuilding, I could just say, hey, look, let's not ever post anything where I'm not under like perfect lighting. Right, and then you don't shoot anything where you're not in like the perfect lighting, and you don't even take your shirt off when you're not in like perfect condition. But once you're on that stage, there's really nowhere to hide, you know. But regardless of that, I thought Sam Sulek did great. I think he'll do even better in the next show. Waist was tiny, back looked pretty big. Interesting. I thought he would weigh a little bit more, but again, it's his first show. I think he weighed like 220 or 225 or something like that. You know what would be cool to do is to go through Huberman's podcast that he did with the legendary Pavel. I'd love to react to some of the stuff that he was saying in there. I think some of the stuff I've seen so far is just clips that Huberman's posted, and so they're kind of taken out of context. I need to hear more. But it was really interesting. He talked about the relationship between 3 sets of 8 and 8 sets of 3 being very similar, where you're getting a similar amount of work done. In the case of 8 sets of 3 reps, you're going to be using more weight. And in the case of 3 sets of 8, you're going to be using a similar amount of weight distributed over those 24 repetitions because of the amount of reps that you're doing. So if you do 100 pounds for 3 reps, there's a big difference between doing it for 3 reps, and that equals 300 pounds, versus doing it for 8 reps, which equals 800 pounds. In the end, the volume ends up being very similar. The impact on the body ends up being like immensely different. 3 sets of 8, especially if you're kind of taking it to failure, that's a little bit more of a hypertrophy protocol. Obviously you need more than just 3 sets to get the full stimulus, but you would get a good stimulus if you did 3 pretty good working sets of 8 reps. 8 sets of 3 is a little bit more on the powerlifter side, and that's West Side Barbell. That's speed training. For the bench press was 8 sets of 3. The squat was sets of 2, mainly because Louis found that the bench press was done at a faster rate, and so he felt like he could sneak in an extra rep, as opposed to squat and range of motion and so forth. If you did 3 reps, it might be a little taxing. Also, it's hard to have that elasticity on those reps. But the biggest difference between the two is 3 sets of 8 is a hypertrophy protocol, and 8 sets of 3 is more of a strength protocol. Typically, when you do 8 sets of 3, you're going to be using more weight for that lower rep range, only doing 3 repetitions. So you might rest 4 minutes, 6 minutes in between sets, depending on the kind of weight that you're moving. Very common for, 700-800 pound deadlifter to rest 8 to 10 minutes in between a set of 3, Yeah, there's people that are that strong, and they're not really like sitting there with a timer a lot of times, but they'll just kind of go when they feel ready. Josh Bryant's actually really good with rest intervals. He's a little bit more specific because Josh realizes like what a huge difference it has on the body if you go into a set slightly compromised. You go into a set slightly compromised, someone might think that that's bad, but what if you go into that set slightly compromised and you do so progressively over a few weeks? Well, now we're going to end up with a good adaptation and probably just end up stronger, or to be able to just handle more work, or to be able to condense the work into a shorter period of time so your workout doesn't take forever. But yeah, a lot of interesting conversation. All of that goes off of Perlipin's chart, which has been shown time and time again. We've talked about it 700 million times on my podcast. I've talked about it many times before. Perlipin's chart, a former weightlifting coach, he found that between 18 to 24 reps being optimal for strength gains. So that's where you get 4 sets of 6, 6 sets of 4, 8 sets of 3, 10 sets of 2. You start, just all the combos you've heard people use forever. Interestingly enough, I think it was interesting that Westside Barbell, Louis took that adaptation and put it into the strength side of things. I think because it did come from Olympic lifting, because the adaptation and because the information came from weightlifting, I think Louis just assumed, okay, those guys are moving with the barbell pretty fast, so why don't I take this rather than directly applying it to straight up powerlifting, and rather than having 8 sets of 3 be a max effort workout, he thought, why don't I have the 8 sets of 3 be a speed workout? Why don't I have the 8 sets of 3 or 8 sets of 2 or 10 sets of 2 be a squat workout type thing for speed and dynamic effort, what he called it. The max effort day was the conjugate system where you just swing around to different particular exercises every couple of weeks, every 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, and you would set a new PR. So you might do a PR close grip bench press off a 2 board 1 week. The next week you might do close grip bench press floor press. The week after that you might do a wider grip full range of motion bench. Then by the time you come back around to that close grip 2 board bench again, hopefully you gained a little strength. And you didn't gain strength just from that max effort protocol. You gained strength from the speed protocol that you're doing on the weekend, which is usually done 72 hours later, and or you're gaining some strength from some of the hypertrophy work when you're doing your rolling dumbbell tricep extensions, you're doing your JM presses, you're doing shoulder, I mean, you name it, like any upper body exercise is going to contribute to upper body gains. How nervous are you guys about this kind of thing? That 25, you know, I got this yellow 25, which is Ivanko. I got the Rogue 25. I got the metal 25. I got the urethane 25. And I've weighed these before, so it's great. It's a real nightmare. Don't ever weigh them. Don't ever weigh them. Just don't do it. I mean, these are Rogue, so modern company. I'm sure they, I mean, these aren't like specifically calibrated plates, so they should have a little play to them, but you know, the competition plates are usually dead on. But you start mixing and matching weights, you get the white weights and the black weights and this thing, standard, the things that say standard on them, you can be about 105% sure that doesn't weigh 10 pounds. It's definitely not precise at all. So you get a 10 pound, like you think it's like it doesn't make that big a difference, but it's like you have 11 pound plate on one side, a 12 pound plate on the other, and all the other 10s you've been using are like 9 pounds. I've weighed them before, and the heavier the weight gets, the worse that it gets, because the 45s are even worse. You know, the 45s, sometimes they weigh heavy and sometimes they're a little bit light. You got a 46 pounder on one side, and you go to do a bench and you're sure as shit, you're like, these are uneven. And you look at the plate and it says standard, and you're like, standard 45, like it's got to be right. And it's a nightmare. So don't ever weigh them. It'll only make things worse. And then you're going to try to counteract it by like benching crooked. And that can work, but not that well. They're great grip exercise, by the way. You know, people like to really complicate a lot of stuff, but this is a nice pinch grip. Just grab 2 10s, stick them together. If the 10s are like real thin, then you might need like 3 of them. You can do this with 5s as well. By the way, I've said it a bunch of times, but these prime machines are really nice. You get to target some different areas. I think this one here makes it so it's a little tougher at that end range. The more weight I think that we get down there, I think the more that it makes the start a little bit harder. So it's just kind of interesting to play around with those different positions, or whatever the hell it says on here. A little dusty, but yeah, it gives you some different spots. And then if you want to do a drop set, or if you want to do each set a little different with weights in different position, same thing for this guy too. Get the weights in different spots. Chains accommodate resistance. Less weight at the bottom, more weight at the top. Bands and chains are great ways to, in my opinion, train your body intensely without the same damage on the joints, because the accommodation of the resistance of it being lighter at the bottom is where we could say the squat is kind of the hardest. It's coming up out of the hole, out of the bottom. That's where the weight will be the lightest. It'll be its heaviest at the top as more and more chain jumps off the ground. As the chain accumulates onto the floor, you get less and less weight. This is 20, 40, 70, so 70 pounds per side, so it's 140 additional pounds. So at the on rack, it might feel like a little bit of weight. This is what we got, 100 pounds here, and this is like a 65 pound bar. So it's like 165, you know, plus the 140 pounds of chains. So at the top, it'll feel like something. As I lower myself, it won't feel like nearly as much. And there we go. All right. Whoa. The rack decompresses a little bit. Come on, you can do it. There we go. I think I can figure it out. There we go. Woo! Always feels good to bench with a belt on. I've always liked it a lot. Feels like your back is in the weirdest position when you bench press. That's why I'm keeping my feet on the bench too. A lot of extra stress and tension on the back when you bench. Equal to or greater than squats and deads. Your back is thrown into a completely unnatural, maybe not unnatural position, but your back's thrown into a weird position. And then you statically have to hold that position for 7, 10, 12, however long your set lasts for. I'm not saying to never bench with your feet down. You might compete that way and so on, but every time you get to have a chance to have the feet up, it feels nice. You can flatten that back out. You could even do a slight decline like I'm doing. I push my butt off the bench a little bit. All in an effort to conserve that back. Save it. Save it for something cool. We still got to do a better job at these burpees. Freaking Dr. Burpee testing people's blood pressure. That's what this exercise was made for. What an asshole. Alright, here we go. I like to do a little jump first because that momentum helps get me down to the ground a little easier. So that's why I'm doing that weird jump first. And I'm trying to jump onto the bench. But I'm not doing so good with my rhythm. So here we go. There we go. Brain ain't working. There we go. Got one clean one. You're tired, or you're fatigued to a certain extent, but this is right where you want to be. This is what you talked about last night, you know, the night before, the day before, the week before. You talked about this for a while, like going on that run or doing that lift. And now you're here and now you're in it and you want to tuck tail and run because you're starting to get a little fatigued. But right here is where if you just push a little bit, you will be slingshotted through, past, and beyond some things that you thought were never possible for you before. So do your best, hang in there, and stick with it. And tell yourself to do a little more. I think Nick Barris is like, do one more. I think Ed Milet talks about, you know, doing another rep. And then you got Tom Platz, who said if you got one more rep, you got 5 more reps. There's only one Tom Platz. We added more weight to this set. So, a little slower, but still felt good. I don't think any of us have any idea of like what we really have inside, what we're really made out of. Like, I could sit here and do this style of workout, you know, for a long time. But if there's a CrossFitter in here, high rocks athlete in here, and they were really, you know, pushing on me, I could work out at a much even more intense pace than this, or I could work out with less rest and be more tired. I mean, I'm not gonna be able to keep up with them, but my point is if a really good power lifter pushed you in a reasonable way in powerlifting, you would get better at powerlifting. If a bodybuilder pushed you in a reasonable way, you'd get better at that. That's what we saw Stan Efferding do. When he wanted to be a bodybuilder, he hung out with bodybuilders. He went to Flex Wheeler. When he wanted to powerlift, he came to me. The rest is history. He broke records. He became a pro in bodybuilding, and he broke records in powerlifting. So, I mean, I think a really good move for me, even thinking on that same note, is like I got to get around some good runners. I'm around a couple good coaches, but I need to be around some pretty good high-level runners. And I've met a few in the area, and so now I have to kind of go and work out with them, because even them, you know, cruising at a 9-minute mile pace on a run is not the easiest thing for me to do still at this point. So this is the reverse hyper from West Side Barbell. This is Louis Simmons' kind of flagship invention. It's supposed to kind of traction the spine a little bit, open it up a little bit. I don't like to use specific terms because sometimes it's not actually what's happening, but it feels like there's some decompression of the spine. It feels like there's kind of an offloading and getting the legs to swing under. Probably the most misunderstood thing about this piece is people want to swing the weight up really high, but really swing the weight. It's hard to tell when you're doing it. You want to swing the weight basically until the glutes are fully flexed, which isn't going to be way up here, because your back shouldn't get in some crazy hyperextended position and your feet shouldn't get all crazy. So your back should be here and your feet should be going, because your body is going to be on a little bit of an angle too. It's about the underneath. I always tell people that you should be able to see the plate when you're looking down. That's how you know your range of motion is good, because you want that weight to swing underneath. Swings underneath, it's gentle, pulling the back apart. You just got to be careful, because like your back just never goes through that. It like literally never goes through that unless you're in some sport and you move real abruptly, or you're in like a car accident or something like that. So that whoosh, it'll feel like pretty crazy. So I used to do this all kinds of different ways. I used to do it with like 5 plates and all kinds of stuff like that. And it just seems like if you do it controlled, you get a lot from it, and you don't need this. Seems like you don't need a crazy amount of weight. Woo! It's really cool to see how strong people are getting with stuff like that. We've had a few guys on the show talking about sandbags and stuff. We need to get a couple ladies on the show talking about that stuff, because the chicks are unbelievable. The weights they can lift is nuts. I actually feel a little bit of pain and tenderness in the hamstring. So that's actually, it's good. I didn't know it was there. So I need to move this a little bit, this movement a little bit more, just for that kind of hyper awareness of where the hamstrings are at. So all these things that happen as you get older that you're not even like aware of. You know, I didn't realize like straightening my leg out is kind of hard, because I'm getting some pull from the hamstring. It's like, where did that come from? Like that's never been, I mean, I got some mobility issues, but I was like, damn. Yeah, certain things just happen. I mean, it's not just age, it's the inputs too, right? It's like what we're doing. So I've been sprinting a lot. So of course the hammies are gonna be lit up. But that's a gnarly leg extension right there. You see there's inhibition when there's load on that tissue. That's all this is, just pressure. It's just like like there's pounds of pressure right now on my hamstring because I'm sitting on the kettlebell, I'm sitting on it, right? And my hamstring, it doesn't want to handle the pounds of pressure. So it's not directly related to weights. It's not directly related to like, oh my God, you know, this is going to happen to your hamstring because you can't straighten your leg out with a kettlebell up your ass. But some of the principles are similar. That's why it's good to have a lot of different stuff around. Amazon purchase, whatever the hell that says. Skills. This thing's nice for the spine. Lay on the ground, kind of roll over that. It's really nice to do stuff where you don't have to get on the ground. You know, I want to encourage people to get on the ground, but I realize that it's not always that enticing. And so when you have things that allow you to do your myofascial release in a seated position or even standing position, it's really nice. Oh yeah, there we go. There's some spots on the hamstring that are weird, like you have to get a very particular angle into them. And then also your positioning of your back matters a lot. Like if you're here, you might not feel it as much if you're more upright. Check by the insertions of stuff too. So the hamstring has a low and high. I'm done on the hamstring curls, by the way. So I only did 2 sets, but I just haven't done them in a long time. And I don't want that, the cost of not doing hamstrings to creep up on me during my next run, which will probably be sometime tomorrow. By the way, my heart rate got up to 169 yesterday. I don't know if that's bad or good or what, but that sounds like a lot. I checked it, I was like, oh my God. I guess, you know, a couple things, like one is I was able to sprint really well when I ran 6 miles the day before. That's pretty cool. My heart rate was probably slightly heightened going into the workout, considering that I ran 6 miles the day before. Getting a new heart rate PR is like halfway a good thing and halfway a bad thing. You know, I think it's a good thing that my body can handle it. It's also something to kind of keep an eye on, like, hey, you know, how, it's something to watch out for. And then like, can I hold my heart rate at like 155 or 160 for like a given period of time? Because that's probably what's going to take for me to get better at those 400s. And then even just looking at those 400s, you know, from a standpoint of watching the form and technique, it's like, it sounds so obvious to say, but like the 400, I won't be any good at the 400 until I can run it like it's a 200. You know, if I run a 200, I'll run faster. Or if I run 100, I'll be faster. My feet will be further apart. My stride will be different. But I can't attack the 400 that way because I don't have the fitness level for it. So it's really great to see video input of yourself. It really gives you a lot of feedback. And it made me think like, I'm on the right path. I'm doing a lot of the right things. I also think there's like low-hanging fruit. I think there's like, I literally think walking on a treadmill with a weighted vest, I think would be golden. Because I just think that my VO2 Max it's just not, it needs to be better. You know, and if it's better, it's just gonna make that whole thing easier. There's a lot of ways to get a VO2 Max up, but I think for me, for now, just because my capacity isn't awesome, I think that I could get something that probably other runners would be like, I can't get anything out of that. So the mile's been broken, I think, twice this year already. Jacob Ingebrigtsen, yeah, he broke the all-time world record. He did like 3:45, 3 minutes 45 seconds. The half marathon world record got broken recently. Ingebrigtsen, who broke the mile, he trains quite a bit on a treadmill. It's really interesting. All the variables are super controlled at that point. I think that's pretty cool. So that is a huge advantage of going on a treadmill. Like going out for a run, it's actually kind of difficult to control the variables and control your heart rate and control the speed and elevation. And like here in Davis, there's no hills and stuff, so You have a huge advantage on a treadmill. Just, I can just up the incline or up the speed and you can kind of maintain it. So people are finding interesting ways of getting better. This ain't no 330 pound, 350 pound rock like Caveman Dave, man. There we go. That's it for all the lifting for today, folks. Did some back, did some chest, did some squats, did some burpees. It's been a while. Did a little bit of bench pressing, a little bit of hammy work, a little bit of reverse hyper. Now I'm gonna prep for a podcast with this guy Mike. I think it's Adelia. Anyway, this guy, 350 pound overhead bent press with like a barbell. I don't know, just disgusting. Disgusting what these guys can lift today. So we'll see what he's all about for today. I'm super excited to have him here. He's gonna show us a little bit of what the freak show is all about. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later.